G'day everyone, it's James Davis from the Pax8 Academy again. I've got Greg from Zen Contract. Thanks for joining me, Sharpie.
Yeah, hey James, great to be here. Good to be talking to you live from my kitchen in Auckland, New Zealand. Always nice to see your face.
Well, I'm glad to get you on because I'm having a lot of conversations with people around contracts, and it says it in the name, Zen Contract. But you've run a successful MSP before, and I wanted to get your view on what best practice contract management is. And I thought we'd just dive in, and I'll ask you a tough question of what are you seeing out there in the industry of how the average technology business is managing contracts?
The good question. The main theme is it's amazingly similar across the geographies that we're talking to people. So whether that's UK, Ireland, Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, those are the main geographies that we're in. Is that the typical MSP that might be, we all banter you around these figures, but let's go after a 10-person business that's looking after 40 clients. About 60% of their revenue is on any sort of client, any sort of contract at all. So that's obviously a gaping hole of 40%. There's many, many handshake agreements out there or legacy agreements that started off with a managed services agreement for X, Y, and Z services, but they're actually being supplied A, B, and C services, and it's evolved over time. So those aren't actually against a particular contract. Less than 40% are using any master services agreement sort of framework, so they're not segregating the general terms and conditions and who's responsible for what and who gets remunerated for what way, all those types of things in a master services agreement. Less than half are doing that. That's certainly best practice. And a lot of the smaller ones are running relatively unprotected or with no structure and, not to use scaremongering tactics, but just really running the gauntlet based on everyone in the world is a nice and fair and reasonable person, which unfortunately we all know is not the way. You can get away and run a business for a period of time, but at some stage you're going to have to refer back to some type of rules of the game / agreement / contract. And certainly where Zen Contract was born out of is to be able to bring proper contract process to the general MSP or TSP and make sure that what's typically the high-end solutions, we're providing that at a fraction of the price to provide 20-year best practice contract automation for the general MSP and bring it into their life, to save a whole lot of time, mitigate huge amounts of risk, and allow them to operate in a total clarity and peace of mind sort of state. So that was where the name Zen Contract came from, because obviously you're operating in a bit more of a Zen state. And it was born out of our MSP. I had Base 2, I started in 2009, sold it in 2021. 50 odd people doing 12 mil and sold it for a 10x multiple, not only because of contract management and really good process that we had there, but it certainly was one of the main factors. And we thought we did put that into a piece of software that we could share with the industry, right down to $50 a month for running all of your master services agreements or MSA. So it's incredibly low cost, and wanted to get it out there to the market so that everyone could operate in a protected way. That was a particularly long-winded answer, but there you go.
Well, it was good. We got got quite a good understanding of where the market's at. I'm curious from your perspective, why is the market at what it's like? Why do you think we're still working off handshake agreements?
We've all been incredibly good at providing repeatable process and technology process to our clients for some time. So we've been evolving our technology stack, right back from the beginning. So the RMM tools, before that it was having ticketing systems, which evolved into being called PSAs, and then we had remote monitoring and management, spearheaded by probably Kaseya in the early days, and then SolarWinds Enable and a few other players. And we've always been looking at the technology and supplying the services of a technology. Traditionally, a lot of us in the MSP game were pretty crap at following up on getting money, so we would supply the services, we would try and provide the best repeatable services that allowed for a really solid and stable technology platform along the way, James. So our services, our services we're providing to our customers allowed them to have stable technology so they could get on and build their business. And a lot of it started with us who were technologists that didn't necessarily have, backgrounds in commercial law or commerce degrees or anything like that. I have one, but, I certainly didn't use it in my early days of supplying technology services. And so it's evolved over that time is that not many of us went to business school, and so we don't know the benefits or the clarity that could come with having a solid contract infrastructure, much the same as in the early days. Not many of us could pull apart a profit and loss in a balance sheet and discuss the benefits of shifting money from one place to the next or depreciating assets and all those types of things. So this is an evolution of the maturity of our industry as a whole. The general MSP is getting a little bit more mature. And we probably got delayed for 3 years with COVID getting in the way, where we had to rush everyone to work from home and then bring them back again. And, so where I think the technology stack that we use to provide our external services has matured dramatically over the last 10 years. We're only just starting to mature the technology stack of what we use to run our businesses internally. And so that's why we are still operating in a not so mature way, I guess, when it comes to contracts and stuff across the board. There is outliers at either end. We've come across MSPs that are incredibly mature and they just use our solution to be able to turn it into a repeatable process and one with governance and controls. And then we have MSPs that have no infrastructure as far as contracts at all, and they'll use our templates and get going, straight out of the bat. But I think that's it in the long and the short is that, people are starting to get comfortable with the fact that we have matured our external facing technology stack, notwithstanding the security side of things, which is ever evolving, of course. But we're now looking internally as we are all getting a little bit older and wiser and maybe potentially grooming our businesses for a sale. But before it's even a sale, it's just operating in a operationally mature way so that we can actually run the best business, make the most profit, groom it for a good sale later on, and all of those positive benefits that come with that.
So, keeping that in mind, that's exactly what I'm seeing as well, is that that maturing of the operations, the potential valuations for exit and sale. There's a lot going on. We've been around as an industry for about 20 years. Why do we want a contract? Like, what is it doing for us? If we're not quite there yet with our awareness and going, actually, I need to do something with my contracts. Why do we need them?
So a basic response to that is it sets up the rules of the game. So it's one of those foundational building blocks that says it's a reference point. So if I'm supplying you services and you're supplying me some money for those services, it sets the rules of the game up as exactly how that flow goes. And so in the first way, the first direction, I'm supplying you services. What services am I supplying you? How well should I be supplying them? Obviously, what's the service level agreement? So we need to have that sort of set up in there. And you know what? There's the odd occasion where we don't supply such great services, or we could have done better. And so you need to provide a framework for the customer to be able to sit down and have a chat with you that you haven't done it right? And vice versa, they might miss a payment. So what happens when that scenario comes into play? Do we start to apply an interest rate, or if they go past, X, Y, and Z gates, what is the systems that should follow? And so it's clarity of your business engagement, because otherwise what you've got is an implication of how each party interprets the agreement that you have, because there is still a social agreement, right? Or what they call a social contract. As soon as you start providing services and receive a payment, then there is an implied contract. But if you want to set the rules of the game up of exactly how you might escalate in a particular scenario, that's the benefits of the contract. It comes down to clarity and not second guessing or assuming what the other party is implying from these services and stuff. And that's usually where relationships break down. When one of these, over a period of time, we all know that something goes slightly wrong with a a service level or a method of payment, or it might be that someone speaks to someone rudely, or all those types of things. And so the contract sets out all of those rules of the engagement, and then each service might have specific overriding conditions that go with that. Because when you start supplying a high-end security solution, then there's certain legal ramifications and implications that go with that service over and above your general terms and conditions and master services agreement. So, but I think the main thing that you're really getting there is 100%. You're getting a balanced who's supplying what, who's paying for what arrangement. One that's enduring. It will actually last a long time because it's not going to fall over. If something goes wrong, then there's a set of rules and conditions as to how you go about resolving that conflict. And then anything that's over and above that for extra services, there's rules and conditions that go with those things. So, but clarity's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that, because what I see often is people starting to go on this journey of doing contracts. They'll go onto the various forums. They'll grab heaps of different people's contracts and they'll just hodgepodge it together. But they don't end up with the clarity that you just explained. They haven't gone through this journey to understand what they're delivering, what the expectations are, what all the mechanisms are. They're just viewing the contract as something to sign because it will protect them, but they don't really understand the ins and outs of it. So, from your perspective, sorry, you go.
There's certain elements, I think, sorry to chop you off, there's certain elements there that an agreement in whatever shape or form should be, and it should be easy to read. Right, and I think a lot of what we as an industry have shied away from is forcing our customers to read a really wordy, lengthy legal document that we've either hodgepodge from someone else or got from our lawyers or whatever. And I'm not anti-lawyers, but we all know they've been pretty good at making things remarkably complicated. And so an agreement that is incredibly easy to read, it sets out very clearly who's responsible for what. And I know I'm going to be telling the listeners here to go after some of the resources, but on our website, zencontract.com, there is a resources area, and there is a number of ebooks there. One actually sets up the easiest way to create and what should be in a master services agreement, and the different types of contracts. And obviously you can download free templates and things, but ultimately that's where it should be. And what it hasn't been in the past is a document that sets out who's responsible for what services are being supplied, what happens if something goes wrong, how do we get paid, and the general terms and conditions, which are typically contract law for your geography, right? The terms and conditions are going to be different when you're operating in New South Wales than they are in Louisiana and maybe Alberta. And so that one section of a 6-section document will be pertinent to how laws are interpreted in your particular region. But even that should only be one, If you were to go onto ChatGPT right now, James, and say, please write me a terms and conditions for operating an IT services business in New South Wales, Australia, it'll write you 2 pages, and then the last line will say, all of this agreement is governed by the rules of operating a business under New South Wales general area, right? And that's pretty much the same line that you're going to get in Alberta and Auckland, New Zealand, and various different interpretations, from Louisiana to New Orleans to New York. But they don't need to be complicated, and typically agreements and contracts have been really complicated. The templates that you get in Zen Contract are so easy to read. It's a number of tables and simple language, just because they wanted to take some of the wordiness and legalese and everything that potentially none of us have an understanding of, and maybe our clients don't either. There's an element in the legal industry, maybe like there was in the IT industry in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, where there's mystery, there's money. And part of our mission is to really simplify that engagement for the MSP and their clients, so you get that clarity that you're after. A lot of that has not been there in the past.
Yeah, what I'm taking away from what you're describing is you as the owner need to have clarity on what you're delivering, who's responsible for it, and when it needs to be delivered, and what are the mechanisms to it. And I think we've shied away a lot of the time from understanding that detail, and this probably goes back to your point around the business maturity and where our mindsets are at. operationally. It's very technology focused, not process focused.
In the first 5 years, and you would have seen this too because you were running a business at the time, and I've been doing MSP now for what, near on 25 years, is where the biggest set of discrepancy and tension in the early arrangements with our customers was all what's included and what's not included, right? What's in, what's out. And the implication from the customer is that everything was included, and from us, we wanted to minimize what was included because otherwise we'd be working, for 14 cents an hour, which we didn't want to do. And so this, having the clarity there, and as we've evolved and matured, so have our clients. Their understanding of what a fixed fee arrangement is and what's fair and reasonable has all got a lot more mature. And typically we're dealing with larger businesses, not necessarily principals or owners who just want everything done for free or for the included price. And we're incredibly passionate about it, and it was all quite hard and frustrating for us. Nowadays, you're typically working with maybe a CFO or still a principal, but the principal realizes that there's only so much that can be done for that fixed price. But this sets out clearly what's in, what's out. There's another level of clarity, and it's something that you can refer to. So when they receive a bill for some project work, they can't come back to you immediately and go, hey, I thought this was included in my $3,000 a month. If you refer to the contract portal, because if you have one with us or someone else, then it's easy for them to see it. You can look under clause 6. It says that project stuff's not included, so that's why I've sent you a bill. And then it's fine. Everyone gets on with business, and the relationship's still healthy. But when you have to stand there and defend yourself all the time because there's no infrastructure or contract to be able to refer to, no level of clarity, then it becomes an argument and the relationship starts to break down. So yeah, that clarity and having that contract there to refer to actually endures that relationship. It allows it and gives it framework for you to go and on and have some money change hands in fair and reasonable way.
So once a sort of owner gets in that mindset and they're starting to build out that clarity and they're building out their contracts, what are from your experience, what is that process to convert your client base that are used to handshake agreements actually onto this more mature way of operating?
Yeah, so the journey that we take customers on, or the way that I see it working, is that we actually have like a compliance module, but it will help them in one or two ways, right? So one is it's a really easy way to get notification out to all of your customers that you're going through a contract maturation process. And without making it long and wordy, you just put in, it's a predefined email, but it's got 3 bullet points in there, is that we're getting clarity for both parties. We are making sure that it's referenceable and easy to see if in the future we ever need to look back at our agreement and how we do business together. And it's going to allow us to have the opportunity to do some fixed price agreements. If you want to lock in your price now for a longer period of time, then we can avoid any price increases, and we want to provide that value to you because you've been there for a long time. So the main thing is notifying them it's coming, giving them the opportunity to benefit from it, and that it's better for them as well as it is for you. So that's what we're trying to convey. So that contract maturation process, it doesn't mean that they're going to get, and you want to make it really clear in this email, we always guide our people, is that we're telling them that prices are not going up. This is not a pricing discussion. All we're doing is getting a piece of paper signed by both parties, digital paper that says this is how we operate and integrate together, and we provide these services, you pay us this money, all of those standard things. And what used to be a significant logistical nightmare as far as all of the admin and paperwork and stuff, if you've got decent software, it's do it once, it's templated, you send it to everyone, it manages the process of getting the signatures and storing it in the right place, and it's nice and easy and simple. And we start off with a master services agreement that's got no pricing information in it at all. It's just, who does what the service level agreement is, how do we get paid, is it on the first of the month, whatever, sets out those terms and conditions and just sets it up there. And you might get, if you've got 100 customers, you might get 4 or 5 that go, oh, really, do I have to do this? I thought we were good. It's just a little bit of extra level. And you might have to explain it to them that the benefits to them are equally as beneficial as it is to you as a business. And if they were to ever try and pass an audit, they would want to know that their technology supplier has actually got this type of level of maturity. It's a benefit thing. But yes, you're going to have to do it for 2 or 3 people. The positive benefits of the MSP, your business is worth twice as much overnight, just overnight. If you ever look to sell, you are more protected. If one of those clients got hacked and they came back at you and you had in your master services agreement that you were not liable for any negligence to do with a cybersecurity event, then you're not going to be prosecuted. They can't come after you. So that type of level of protection is definitely there. So we start off with notify your clients, get the MSA out there, use the software to start to provide a service schedule that knows about the start date of a contract, the end date of a contract, and then you can start to manage the term when expiries come up. And that the benefits of that, James, is that you're getting notified in advance to either your salespeople or to yourself as to what's currently expired, or what's expiring this week, this quarter, this month, not in that order. And then you can go and have discussions with them about cross-sell, upsell, pricing discussions. And it's about 70% more likely to be able to get the outcome that you want that if you're doing it ahead of the expiry date as opposed to after the expiry date. So that's why notifying and understanding the end date and the term and everything is a lot more efficient. And that's where it was born out of. We mapped out in 2018 this lack of process for us in our base 2 MSP. And it started off with me having to write all the proposals. I wanted to get faster at that. And then I was like, well, proposals are not really the main problem. It's more because they're quite templatable, more the contracts and understanding when these things are going to expire and making sure the level of protection is there, making sure that we can easily identify who has an MSA, who signed it, and are we actually operating a level of business interaction that's protected by that foundational document. And so we mapped out all of the things that it would be great to have this software do, and we started off with a first version, and some of the listeners who listened to this would have seen it, and it was suitably terrible. And we just worked away at making it a bit better, kind of like an ice carving over a course of an evening, and chipped away a bit there and got it a bit better, a bit more refined. And so, regardless of whether people want to buy it or not, it's more of a case of having a system and implementing that system and having the repeatable processes in there frees you up to do so many other things, and that you've got a level of protection around you from making sure those MSAs are signed and your service schedules are on term, and when the renewals are coming up. You just get so much more slick at operating your business. You're not missing the opportunities. Contracts aren't expiring. Sometimes contracts expire and then people stop billing, and you don't see it for 4 or 5 months, and you're not receiving that money, and then you've got to go back and get that money, and the guy goes, I wouldn't mind a discount, and so you're losing money, right? So all of those things.
I think the way that you framed up the notification to the clients is it's an operational maturity step that you're taking is a big one. I think a lot of owners are afraid to say that we weren't doing it that well in the past. Now we're going to do it that well and have a conversation around, to their clients about it. So I think that sort of viewpoint and just owning it, I've seen time and time again, the clients appreciate it. The clients appreciate that you are evolving your business, you are doing it better. So I think that's a very good point of yours.
That would be the biggest thing from if someone's listening to this, is to be comfortable in the fact that your clients are going to be more appreciative of receiving a notification from you that you're going through a contract maturation process, or you're going to go, mature your contract process, however you'd like to verbalize it. They will revel in the fact that they're receiving that from you, because they want to know that they're dealing with a technology business that is growing and evolving and improving. No one will ever receive a complaint. None of our customers have ever received a complaint from anyone. Even the oldest, longest handshake agreements have all come back to them and said, oh yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, we'll get that signed straight away. So there's no real downside to it. Very different if you want to attack it with, hey, we're going to be sending out some pricing increases. That is not what I'm talking about. That can come later, but to get a framework to start with, an MSA with no pricing involved, that'll never get any complaints at all. Yeah, for sure.
I think in this day and age as well, like it's a legitimate reason to, even if you do have a bit of pushback on people around the maturity steps that you're taking, is, well, insurance is requiring this from both sides more and more. If MSPs don't have a contract that's impacting their premium, or they're at risk of not getting insured. And same on the other side for the clients. Their cybersecurity policies and that are looking for mature providers. So there is a external force as well that we can leverage to say, yeah, we need to go about this. This is what the trigger point has been for us to start protecting both our risks in a contractual manner.
Yeah, I totally agree. So there's two aspects to this. One is that you can quite, within your rights, so if you can easily display to your insurance underwriter that you have proper contract management and proper policy management with managing all of your end customers to make sure they've seen and signed and agree with your cybersecurity policy that you might be doing on behalf of your clients, then you can ask for a discount on your premiums for you being underwritten because you've got proper infrastructure in place. Much the same as we have received, if you're following a particular IT security stack, Kaseya brought to the market that if you're using all of their stack, then you're instantly underwritten for $1.5 million of insurance. But so we don't have that same agreement, but we're certainly seeing that where underwriters will go, okay, well, you seem like a mature business, so we're actually going to frame you in a different level of actuary risk, so therefore we're going to provide your insurance underwriting to you at a slightly lower premium. And that again is just logical, because if you're an insurance underwriter, you want to insure a more mature business that has better process, they're going to be slightly less risk than someone that's running with no contract infrastructure, and if there's an issue, then they're more likely to get sued, so therefore they should be paying more for their insurance. Much the same as your life insurance, you're going to pay more if you're 75 than if you're 25, because you're closer to the end of the road. So it's just life and numbers, really, isn't it? But getting the benefits, there's a lot of benefits that come with good contract infrastructure. Peace of mind's a really big one too. I certainly know that in the MSPs that I sit on the board of, it's one of the first things that we have a look at, obviously because I've got expertise in it, but to make sure that all of their contracts and everything are up to date, and that they've got complete clarity about how much revenue there is, the profitability of each of those contracts, how much time's been spent against them, and when are they up for renewal, and do they buy all of the 9 product lines that we have or just 4? So we've got to look at the white space variation there too.
So going along these lines around like the sort of sales side, you mentioned earlier around like the termed contracts. What are you seeing most people do, and how would you get people to view it? Because most people, again, it's going back to that handshake agreement. We're all proud to do month-to-month arrangements and no lock-ins and that kind of thing. What's your view on it, and what's the market looking like?
Yeah, so a lot of people, and certainly ConnectWise made this ever available because they had the ability to have evergreen. There was a flick of a button, you could make sure that there was no end term on the contract, and that came from the fact that even in the early days of ConnectWise, still happens in Autotask, that a contract will get to the end of its term and it stops billing. Ugh. We all jump, go, oh my god, it stops billing. So there was a radio button that says no end date, so it just means it goes on and on and on. So that is where a lot of people are still operating, right? And so on the Autotask side, what we see is that people have set the end date in the contracts to be 2099. And the downside of not having the end or the term of the agreement, regardless of whether you've got any lock-in or not, is that you're missing the opportunity to go and have a repricing discussion and a cross-sell and an upsell. So there's the downside. You've got the you're missing the opportunity to provide 1, 2, or 3 year term and potentially lock in long-term revenue, but maybe at a slightly discounted rate. And that's building long-term tenure where you've got a base contract, so you can speak to them about providing other and more services. But to answer your question, what we're typically seeing is either 1 year contracts. The more mature businesses are going 2 and 3. Many customers are still going month to month to month to month to month, and they're really just using the contract module in their PSA as a billing mechanism, not really as any sort of business interaction, which is in actual fact what they are. The benefits of having a start date and an end date, like I just said, is that you get reminded, you understand that you can go and have a discussion with them. A really good example of who does it properly and properly well is that when we buy a mobile phone, we buy that with a term contract, and typically it'll come with a telephone. Unsurprisingly, that telephone's usually good for 2 or 3 years, and then that's sort of your reminder to be able to go and change it. But they will lock your plan in on a particular level for that term of contract, and then they have the opportunity to do a repricing discussion. Now that's what we're doing in MSP world, but we're missing out on that opportunity of having a repricing. Many of our customers, and I think if we're all honest with ourselves, signed up a customer with, let's say it's 20 users at $100 per user or whatever, and that's all we're charging them. Now, they might be at 28 users now, so we're charging them for more money, but that's only on a per person pro rata basis. We're actually doing a lot more, and things have increased significantly, and we've not really had the opportunity to sit down and have a pricing discussion. Whereas if we'd put them on a 1 year term, this is the price you're getting for 1 year, might lock it in slightly lower for 2 years, then obviously you're having a discussion with them, and you're more likely to be able to adjust CPI to all of the inflation that we've had. I'm not sure if you checked on the last time the price of cheese, James, but it's pretty damn expensive, and so you might want to make sure that all your services are priced correctly.
It's a very good point, because I go around, I talk to a lot of people, and when I ask people how long it's been since they've risen their prices, it's generally a very long time. It's for a lot of the industry, it was just before COVID. It's a long time ago now.
That's it. And then maybe the smart ones would have gone and raised them but applied a discount after COVID. That's what we did. And I'm not just saying, not crowing from the top of the roof nest, but the beauty of that is what you're doing is setting an expectation is that prices should go up, but because of COVID, we're keeping them here. But that provides a framework for you to quite easily nowadays go, hey, COVID's pretty much done. We're gonna jump it up to here, and everyone's like, yeah, thanks for the break, because you're actually taking the win early. It's just managing the social expectation. So the contract, the side of this discussion is not about going and raising your prices, right? So that should be an outcome of managing your contracts over time. The same methodology would apply, James, if you are going to raise your prices, is at least 2 weeks before you're doing anything, you would send out a notification, much the same as Sky TV and your mobile phone people, whatever, they will just let you know that there is a price change happening. And you explain exactly what that's going to be for for X, Y, and Z reasons. And everyone reads the letter, they go, damn it. But that's fair enough, because I've just sent out my letter to everyone else saying that I'm going to do the same thing. But I think given the notification, getting a letter saying your prices has gone up, that's the last thing you want to do, all right? That's the antithesis of anything you ever want to do. Just let them know in advance is bloody good sense, yeah.
I think that's some great wisdom to share, because I think everyone creates that price rise is a much bigger deal than it is. Every time I coach someone through, it's like, I'm afraid they'll say no. Then they just go and do it. And they do the notification, they push out that 5 or 7% price rise, and then they get like 2 or 3 questions back, and no one's blinked an eyelid. So
no, and you know as well as I do what that means. You're doing the same work for no incremental cost, and you're getting 5 to 7% that goes directly to your EBIT figure, directly. I mean, If you haven't done it for 3 years, then I'd strongly urge any listener to actually sit down and go, I'm going to put that through my mill and figure out how I can do that. You might have some grandfather contracts in there that you need to exclude, and so it might end up being an average 4.5% or something across the business. But it's one of the things I miss about not having an MSP anymore. I wish I could actually still go and do that. That was good.
Well, you've shared a lot of good perspective today, Greg. We could talk about this a lot, and this is a very deep topic. What would you want people that have been listening today, if they what are the next actions that they need to take, and what's the big takeaway that you want them to walk away from?
So the biggest thing is to just contracts, and getting involved in a decent contract process does not have to be scary. All right, it's a lot more simple than you think. It's a lot easier to operate and integrate and everything than setting up a PSA. It is 1/5 of the experience, or 1/50th of the experience of getting involved in an MSA. For as little as $50 a month, you can get a full MSA management process from zencontract.com. That's a great place to start. It's super easy, and it will double the value of business and give you all the protection and the peace of mind that you need, right? So that would be my big takeaway from here. Whether you use our solution or someone else's, think about maturing your contract process to evolve your business, get peace of mind, more operationally efficient. There are a lot of acronyms you can just throw out there, but I think then the whole contract process is not as scary as it used to be. We're all going to have to do it at some stage. The benefits that come with getting involved and doing it early are significant, and for a really small amount of money, it's worthwhile taking a look.
Well, that's awesome, Greg. And I'll leave with a final thought that if you don't actually take the steps to mature your operations and things like your contracts and your offerings, your clients are actually going to churn out. I'm already starting to see that, because they're hearing from their other advisors, like lawyers and insurance brokers, accountants, that they need to work with more mature technology providers. And it's happening. And Microsoft is seeing more churn of partner records in M365 than they ever have since Office 365 and M365 has existed. So this is part of that maturing journey and showing that you're trying to step up to the next level for your clients. So it's been a great chat, Greg. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully people have gotten a lot out of this today.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, James. It's always good to see you. And love all of the good stuff that Pax8 in general is doing for the industry. We're really trying to do our bit just in that sort of in that lane of contracts, and enjoyed the chat. Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining me.